Welcome, Senator.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, and thank you all for being there. Yeah, we share these. He has the Mystic River going into Medford. I have the Malden River going into Malden, and the river was just completely polluted. And it took years and years and years to clean it up because it had a color that was unseen in nature. And they cleaned it up, and now we have the Tufts Boathouse is on the Malden River. That's where their crew practices, and that's where now all the high schools crew on Malden River, which would have seemed completely and totally unlikely just 25 years ago. That's how quickly the whole idea of environmentalism has changed, and the Mystic River has been cleaned up too, although some of you just might know it as the movie Mystic River, but it's more than that. It actually animates the personality of the communities, all coming out of Boston Harbor, all coming off the ocean. So that's who we are. We've reclaimed our past, and we're actually going to be deepening Boston Harbor, which was an undervalued asset for a long, long period of time, and had just been allowed to, if atrophy is the right word for a port, then that's what is happened. But as they're widening the Panama Canal, 100 years later, we're going to, with the Army Corps, do the same thing to Boston Harbor, and to deepen it and to make it much more of a port that reflects kind of the 100-year later legacy. So both the Panama Canal and Boston Harbor have needed updating from 100 years ago to meet the changes that have taken place. I was at thank you so much for using the city of Boston as the template for what it is that you are talking about. I don't know if someone from Medford had anything to do with the selection of Boston. But it is completely and totally appropriate for the purposes of what we're talking about here today. What I brought here is kind of the aerial view of what would to Boston if Hurricane Sandy had hit Boston. So where it is red, ladies and gentlemen, that's Faneuil Hall. The Back Bay would have returned to its original personality as a bay. All of these historic monuments would have been under 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet of water. And it is because the oceans are warming, it intensifies the storms, the oceans are higher, and the higher and the warmer they get is the more dangerous it is for those that live in urban areas. And so there, but for the grace of God, went the city of Boston and all the other surrounding communities. In Hurricane Sandy, but for a couple of degree change in where the storm was heading, would have hit us, and we'd still be digging out up in Boston. So it's a warning. It's a warning that we should all heed, and it is something that kind of goes to the heart of what you're all about. And so I thank you all for inviting me here. I thank you, Bob, for having me. And as you're saying, I've been in Congress a long time. There are 535 members of Congress, and only 9 have served longer than me of the 535 members of the House and the Senate. So I have been working on these issues for a long, long time. And I thank your leadership of the Consortium for Ocean Leadership. You will be missed when you step down, but I know you have already set the Consortium on a steady course, and I have all the confidence in the world that it's going to continue on that course. So it is a pleasure to be with you here following Senator Nelson from Florida because he's facing the same issues we're facing up in Massachusetts. It knows no geographical boundaries. Something fundamental has been happening, and we have to deal with it, thinking of it not just as a regional but as a national and international issue. Given the theme of urban oceans, that's where Bob and I grew up. We grew up going to Revere Beach. Okay? It was the first public beach in the history of the United States. They had to take the whole area by eminent domain because all the preceding generations of Yankees and I don't mean baseball players, had arrived and taken all of the land right along the ocean. So there was no place for these waves of Irish and Italian and Jewish immigrants who hit our shores at the turn of the 20th century from the 19th century. So that was the first taking that created a public beach. So that was our relationship to the ocean, Revere Beach. And the rest of the ocean pretty much stayed in private hands, with some exceptions, all the way up and down the coast of New England. So it was a very precious thing that they created that made it possible for blue-collar families to have access to the ocean as well. And for me, those are our happiest memories. You know, my father was a milkman. He would come home. Well, we would go down from Malden Square. From Malden Square, we would go down on the blue bus. We would go down right outside the library, my mother and my brothers and I, when we're 7, 8, 9, 10, and we'd get our sandwiches and our bags of potato chips, and we'd go down on the blue line to Revere Beach. They'd let us off. We'd sit there. We'd have our little blanket. My father would come down after he worked at the Hood Milk Company. We'd swim for another until 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and then we would go home. And that was our happiest memories, those simple memories, you know, the blue bus to the ocean. And so I think that is, for so many people, how they view this. And it doesn't make any difference whether it was Revere Beach or something far more fancy and, you know, elaborate, but it's all the same, okay, whatever those experiences were. And it's our responsibility to pass that on to the next set of people who live on this planet. We have 1/3 of our population in Massachusetts living along its 1,519 miles of coastline. And according to the most recent data, NOAA's Coastal Service Center, ocean-related businesses in our coastal communities accounted for $4.5 billion worth of goods and services in our economy. Coastal communities are on the front lines of climate change. Temperatures are warming, sea level is rising, storms are becoming more extreme, and the oceans are becoming more acidic. And there's not enough focus on that, on the acidity of the ocean as well. We all know these things because of the hard work and the dedication of the scientists here today and the ones you are representing from your home state institutions. The changes that you have carefully measured translate into tangible impacts on the coasts and the people of the Bay State. Massachusetts loses an average of 65 acres, the equivalent of 49 football fields, the same size as the one that Malden and Medford played football on Thanksgiving Day. Lost every single year. 49 football fields of coastline. And as the sea levels rise, then we can just see, looking over the rest of this century, just this change fundamentally in the personality of our state and our relationship to the ocean. By 2050, Boston could suffer $463 billion in damages due to sea level rise. One analysis found that changes in rainfall alone could cost Massachusetts $9 billion in GDP and nearly 38,000 jobs between 2010 and 2050. Our iconic cod have been moving north, looking for the cold water which they crave. When people think about Massachusetts, they think about Cape Cod. The symbol of the state in the State House is the sacred cod. That's who we are. Well, the sacred cod is going north because it needs cold water. You don't have to tell the cod that something's happening. Okay? They just move. They are it's part of their culture. You know, the colder the water, the better. Human beings, they're looking for warmer water. When I was growing up, my father was from New Hampshire. He wanted to take us to Old Orchard Beach every summer, which we went there. The water's cold up there, okay? Very cold. And we were from Malden, not from New Hampshire, okay? So we used to have big fights over this. Revere Beach, good, warm water, okay? In August and September, very nice, okay? But Old Orchard never got warm, okay? So the cod are heading north, okay? But it changes the identity of Massachusetts, changes who we are, how we view ourselves. But more than that, it changes the relationship between our fishermen and the ocean, what they do in Massachusetts, what they're identified with, how they make a living. But even as my fellow senators and I work for legislative solutions that will reduce carbon pollution and help avoid the most catastrophic consequences of climate change, we must respond to the impacts we are already seeing and prepare for those that we can no longer avoid. I am proud of the work that my state is already doing to adapt to climate change. One example is the Storm Smart Coast program developed by the Massachusetts Office of Coastal Zone Management with the goal of helping Massachusetts coastal communities adapt to the effects of storms, sea level rise, and other climate change impacts. In January, Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick announced a $50 million investment in a statewide climate change preparedness plan. This plan includes a $40 million grant program for municipalities to harden their energy services and a requirement that the Massachusetts Department of Transportation assess the vulnerability of its facilities and adopt climate adaptation plans by 2015. The State Office of Coastal Zone Management will also offer a $1 million grant project for green infrastructure coastal resilience pilot projects. These grants will aid Massachusetts coastal cities in efforts to use natural methods for increasing coastal resilience. State efforts alone won't be enough. Last month, the President proposed a $1 billion National Climate Resilience Fund. This fund will support critical investments aimed at helping our communities throughout our nation adapt to the changing climate. The need for work in this area has been clear for years. Henry Waxman and I included a similar proposal in our 2009 climate legislation, which would have provided a funding mechanism for state and tribal efforts to increase climate resilience. And that bill passed in the House of Representatives on June 26, 2009. We got it passed, and the funding was going to be there. But it got killed in the Senate by climate deniers. And so this is just part of a long twilight struggle that we're going to have to make sure that we do finally pass legislation through both parts of the Congress. And that's why I actually broke up Waxman and Markey and went over to the Senate so that I could, make the effort over in the Senate to advance this cause. To make sure these investments are climate smart, we need to make sure that we have solid science to guide them. We must continue to fund scientific research that will help us to gain a better understanding of our oceans, our coasts, and changing climate. For example, the salinity processes of the Upper Ocean Regional Study conducted by NASA and the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution that we are so proud of in Massachusetts looked at high salinity areas in the Atlantic Ocean to gain a better understanding of the Earth's water cycles and its connection with climate. On February 27th, the Global Precipitation Measurement Core Observatory was launched as a joint mission between NASA and the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. The observations coming from this mission will help us to gain a better picture of rain and snowfall, which will in turn help improve the quality of the models we use to understand the current state of the climate and forecast future changes. The scientific community makes valuable contributions to our economy and our society in areas beyond ocean and climate science. The National Science Foundation has formed a successful model of scientific peer review and selecting projects based on their merit within the scientific community. We do not need increased political interference with this process. I will continue to work to get the U.S. scientific community the resources they need to conduct cutting-edge science and to protect the freedom scientists enjoy to pursue the questions that inspire their curiosity. Science and technology has driven the U.S. economy for decades. As we confront the challenges that climate change brings, we need it even more. We need it to make climate-smart investments in preparing for the impacts of climate change. We need it to capitalize on the trillion-dollar clean energy opportunity and creating much-needed jobs. The science is there. The economics are there. And we have to make sure the politics are there so that we can solve this problem while creating great wealth within the United States of America. We can do it. We need your help. We need your work in order to accomplish that goal. It's my honor to be with you. And just one final story. Anna Unruh Cohen, in the back of the room here, she was our chief scientist on the Select Committee on Energy Independence and Global Warming, and which Nancy Pelosi created in the end of 2006 and named me as the chairman. And I said to Anna, where should we go? Nancy Pelosi, as the speaker, wants to go to the right place. And so she said, well, we should go to the scene of the crime. So we went up to Greenland. And Greenland has a block of ice 1,000 miles long and a mile high and 300 miles wide. It falls into the ocean, huh? The increase in the depths of the oceans are just almost unimaginable what the impacts would be upon the coastal urban areas, not just here in the United States, but all around the world. But we would be disproportionately hit by it. And when we were up on top of that ice mass in Ilulissat in Greenland in May of 2007, you could sense as you watched the calving of the ice off of that huge mountain of ice. You could see the pools of water, the oceans of water that are created by the heating of that mass of ice, and the moulins that are eddied out in the course of the summer, where ultimately all of that warm water just pours down to the bottom of that huge ice mass, further liquefying the bottom, of that incredible impact that could, in fact, affect our country and the whole world. So we have a responsibility to do something about it. And you are the front lines of this. And your science, your work is making a big difference. And I just want to let you know that you should stay in this. You should work hard. You cannot be discouraged. Liberals are usually right, but too soon. So you have to wait. You have to wait. They're going to catch up, okay? The science always wins, okay? Science and technology always triumph over bureaucracy and another word that starts with B. So that's just how you should think about this. I can't thank you enough for all of your great work. Thank you so much.